My ex drained my savings to start her dream business with another man. Now she's bankrupt, and I'm the investor she's desperately trying to reach. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I thought I had found the woman who finally matched my ambition. Claire wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. She was magnetic, smart, and had this uncanny ability to make you feel like the only person in the room mattered. From the moment we met, there was this spark, this intensity in our connection, like we were partners in crime destined to conquer the world together. We talked about everything: weekend hikes, our favorite books, and more than anything, our dreams. Business dreams, big ones. I remember nights spent sprawled across my tiny apartment couch, spreadsheets open on my laptop, and Claire pacing, gesturing wildly about ideas I barely understood, but wanted desperately to believe in. She had this way of making her visions feel tangible, like they were already unfolding in front of us. One day she'd say, eyes gleaming, "We'll look back and laugh that we started this from scratch." I trusted her implicitly more than I'd ever trusted anyone. We discussed finances openly, splitting bills, planning future investments, and even joking about what our first office might look like. There was excitement in every conversation, a kind of electricity that made late nights feel like adventures rather than responsibilities. But looking back, there were subtle things, little quirks that now seem obvious. She'd casually drop lines about having big ideas that might need extra funding, always with that smile that made it seem harmless, almost inspiring. I remember thinking, she's ambitious. This is what makes her brilliant. I didn't see caution signs as caution. I saw opportunity. Every plan she pitched felt like an invitation to be part of something bigger than myself, something extraordinary. Even the way she'd brush off minor setbacks. "It's just a hiccup," she'd say, made me feel like we were invincible. There was this bubble we lived in of dreams, plans, and late-night brainstorming, and I didn't question it. I was completely sold on the idea that we were building our future together, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. I had no idea that the foundation we were laying had cracks I couldn't see. Yet I remember the day Claire first sat me down to pitch her dream business. I had no idea it would feel like a turning point, one of those moments that, in hindsight, marked the beginning of everything unraveling. She had this notebook filled with charts, mock-ups, and sketches, everything meticulously organized, like she'd been planning this for months, maybe years. Her enthusiasm was contagious. It was impossible not to get swept up in the vision she painted. "This is more than just a business," she said, eyes shining. "It's a lifestyle, a movement, and I want us to build it together." I leaned in, nodding, feeling a mix of pride and excitement. Convinced that this was our big leap forward, she broke down the numbers, pointing at projected profits, market trends, and potential investors, including me. "I know you've been saving," she said softly, almost conspiratorially, "and I think with your support, we can make this happen faster. You'll be the backbone of this venture." I remember a lump forming in my throat, not fear. Not yet, but this strange mixture of awe and trust. I wanted to believe in her completely. After all, we'd shared our lives, our plans, our mornings and nights. Trusting her felt like second nature. A friend had texted me earlier that week, warning me to be cautious about mixing money and relationships, but I brushed it off. Claire is different, I told myself. This is love and partnership combined something real. I asked her questions about logistics, and she answered them all with ease, even adding little jokes to ease the tension. "You'll see," she said, smirking. "This is going to be legendary." By the end of that evening, I had agreed to invest a chunk of my savings, my little nest egg, the one I had worked for years to build. I felt a surge of excitement, imagining our names on that future business, imagining success together. I was completely sold, convinced we were unstoppable. As I handed over the transfer confirmation later that night, I didn't notice the faint hesitation in her eyes, something that now, in retrospect, should have screamed caution. I thought we were partners, equals embarking on the adventure of a lifetime. But I had no idea that this trust would soon be weaponized against me. At first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Claire would send me updates on progress almost daily, little victories she framed as milestones for our business. I'd read her messages over and over, proud of what we were supposedly building together. But slowly, tiny things started to feel off. Bills didn't quite add up, and sometimes she'd shrug off questions with a casual, "It's just a small hiccup, nothing to worry about." At the time, I wanted to believe high. I told myself that every startup had bumps and that our partnership was strong enough to handle them. I started noticing her being busier than usual, taking meetings that she wouldn't fully explain, staying out later than she used to, sometimes texting someone quickly before sliding her phone back into her bag. One night, I peeked over her shoulder and caught a message that made my chest tighten. "Can you bring the funds today?" "Don't worry, it's all under control," it read. My mind raced. I asked her about it the next morning, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just business stuff," she said, eyes avoiding mine. "I've got a lot on my plate, but it's fine. Seriously, don't stress." Her reassurances were supposed to comfort me, but instead they left a knot in my stomach. There were moments when I caught myself imagining the worst, but every time her charm and persuasive way of explaining things pulled me back. I wanted to trust her completely, and I clung to that belief. Even friends began to notice changes in her behavior. A few commented on how she seemed distracted, almost secretive. She laughed it off, making some joke or spinning a story that painted it as ambition and hustle. I nodded along, still trying to focus on the dream we'd been building together. But the unease was growing, lurking at the edges of every conversation. Every casual excuse, every vague explanation planted tiny seeds of doubt I wasn't ready to face. And deep down, I started to feel that maybe, just maybe, what I thought was our future wasn't quite what it seemed. It hit me like a punch the day I realized Claire was spending more time with Mark. The guy she kept insisting was just a business consultant. At first, I tried to tell myself it was normal startups require networking, she said, and Mark was supposed to be helping with logistics. But the more I noticed, the more it didn't feel like professional collaboration. They were texting late at night, laughing in ways that made my stomach churn, and she seemed suddenly defensive whenever I brought him up. One evening, I stayed late at my office and decided to look a little closer at her social media interactions. That's when I saw photos of Claire and Mark at what she called a business dinner, posing a little too intimately, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, his arm around her waist in one candid shot. My heart thudded painfully. I confronted her as soon as she got home, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who's Mark, really?" I asked. "It's nothing," she replied too quickly, forcing a smile. "He's just helping me with the business. You don't need to worry about it." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was a tension in her eyes that screamed otherwise. Every excuse felt rehearsed. Every laugh with him seemed like it was hiding something. I could feel the trust between us starting to fracture, small cracks spreading silently through what I thought was unshakable. I remember pacing our apartment that night, replaying every conversation, every casual comment she'd made about needing extra help or funds. Something didn't add up, and for the first time, I questioned if the person I loved so deeply was using me. I wanted to call it paranoia, but a sinking feeling told me otherwise. By the end of that week, the unease had grown too loud to ignore. I decided I needed proof, some concrete evidence, but every attempt to get clarity was met with smiles, excuses, and the same persuasive reassurance that it was all part of the plan. I went to bed that night, feeling like I was walking on glass, unsure if I'd stumble onto the truth or if I'd be trapped in a lie I couldn't escape. The next few weeks were a blur of mounting tension and anxiety. Claire started asking for more money, citing unforeseen expenses and urgent business needs. At first, I hesitated. My savings weren't unlimited, but I didn't want to be the one holding us back. Every time I questioned her, she'd look at me with those pleading eyes and say, "You've always believed in me. Don't you want us to succeed?" Her words cut deep, a mix of guilt and affection that made it impossible to say no. I kept telling myself I was investing in our future, in something bigger than just the numbers on a spreadsheet. She became increasingly persuasive, framing each request as a temporary necessity, a hurdle. "If we just cover this one cost, everything else will fall into place," she said, pacing the apartment, her voice full of conviction. I felt myself slipping into the trap of her charm and manipulation, convinced that supporting her meant supporting us. Nights were spent counting my dwindling funds, calculating how much more I could spare without entirely crippling myself. Every dollar I handed over felt like proof of my loyalty, my commitment, my love. But something inside me was shifting. The tight knot in my stomach never left, and even her reassurances sounded hollow. I started noticing the subtle signs again: text, notifications that she'd hide, quick phone calls she'd take in another room, faint smells of perfume that weren't mine. The trust that had once been effortless now required constant effort to maintain. Friends began to ask questions, and I brushed them off, not wanting to admit that our dream was starting to feel like a nightmare. But the tension at home was palpable. Every interaction with Claire carried this undercurrent of something I couldn't name any's. Deception, maybe betrayal by the end of the month. My savings were almost gone, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. Every promise, every heartfelt plea from her felt like it came with a hidden agenda. And yet, despite all the red flags, I still wanted to believe in us. Little did I know the full extent of her deception and the shocking twist waiting for me was just around the corner. It was a Thursday evening when everything came crashing down. I was scrolling through my emails trying to organize receipts and invoices for the business when I stumbled across a document I wasn't supposed to see. My heart sank as I read through it. Claire and Mark had been using the funds I'd trusted her with, not for the business, but for lavish dinners, hotel stays, and trips that had nothing to do with any plan we discussed. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me, my stomach twisting with anger and disbelief. I confronted her immediately, pacing the apartment with the papers clutched in my hands. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "This isn't what we agreed on. You've been using our money for vacations? Luxury dinners." Her face fell for a brief moment, and then she leaned against the counter, trying to look casual. I can explain," she said softly. "It's not what it looks like. Mark and we were just what? Using my savings to live like this?" I interrupted, voice rising. "I trusted you. I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me." She tried to spin a story about unexpected business opportunities and partnerships I couldn't understand. But the proof was in the receipts, in the social media posts she had thought I wouldn't notice. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process how the person I loved and trusted the most could manipulate me so thoroughly that night. I sat in our living room, staring blankly at the wall, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside Mirage, heartbreak, shame, and humiliation, all colliding at once. I realized that everything I thought we were building together had been a lie, a carefully orchestrated performance to drain me of my savings. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife further, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "I know things look bad, but I need you now more than ever. We can fix this together. Please, don't turn your back on me." I felt my stomach drop. She was begging for my help, the same help she had already stolen, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. Claire's messages didn't stop. In fact, they became more frequent, more desperate, each one dripping with guilt and pleading. "I can't do this without you. I thought I could fix it on my own, but it's falling apart. You're the only person who can help me." Every time I saw her name flash on my phone, a mix of anger and disbelief surged through me. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to block her and pretend she never existed. But another part, some remnant of the love I had for her, kept me reading, kept me thinking, maybe, just maybe, she really was in trouble when I confronted her in person that weekend. She looked smaller somehow, frantic eyes darting around as if she was cornered. "Please," she said, voice trembling, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. It's all falling apart. Mark left me, and I just need you." Her words were meant to evoke pity, to guilt me into compliance, and I could feel the manipulation crawling under my skin. "You used me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Every penny I trusted you with. Every sleepless night I spent worrying about Usulide." I know," she whispered, tears brimming, "and I hate myself for it. But I can't do this alone. You have to help me, please." Her desperation was palpable, almost convincing, but I could see through it now. I realized she wasn't asking for help. She was trying to trap me into rescuing her again, to keep me under her control. My mind raced, piecing together every excuse, every charm, every subtle manipulation that had led me here. She had perfected it over months, maybe years, and I had walked right into it that night. I sat alone, scrolling through messages, bank statements, and social media posts, putting together the full picture of betrayal. The anger was almost physical, a tight coil in my chest, but alongside it was a cold, calculated resolve forming. I knew I had all the leverage now, and the power dynamic had shifted completely, but I had no idea just how far I'd have to go to reclaim it. And as I stared at her last message, "Please, don't leave me now," I realized something terrifying. I was the one holding the cards, and she knew it. By the time the weekend rolled around, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. My savings were nearly gone, my trust obliterated, and every interaction with Claire left a hollow ache in my chest. I replayed everything in my mind, the way she smiled while asking for more money, the casual way she'd dismiss my questions, the nights I stayed up worrying while she was out living it up with Mark. I felt humiliated, foolish, and completely exposed. For the first time, I understood the full extent of what she had done, and it hit me like a freight train. I was utterly powerless in that moment. Even my friends started noticing the toll it was taking on me. I tried to laugh off their questions, mask the anxiety that had begun to eat me alive, but inside, I was crumbling. I felt betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words, not just financially, but emotionally. I had invested everything, not just money, but my love, my trust, and my hope for a future with her. And now, it felt like all of it had been weaponized against me. Claire kept messaging desperate and manipulative. "I don't know what I'd do without you," one text read. "Please, just one more chance." I wanted to scream at her, to throw my phone across the room, but a part of me still clung to the memory of who I thought she was. It made the betrayal sting even more knowing the person I loved wasn't who I believed her to be that night. I sat in our living room, staring at the ceiling, heart racing and mind spinning. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and felt this crushing weight of failure pressing down on me. I had lost so much, not just my savings, but my sense of security, my pride, and the naive belief that love and trust were enough. And then it hit me the realization that this was my rock-bottom moment. Every red flag I had ignored, every excuse I had allowed, every dollar I had handed over had led to this. I was completely exposed, emotionally and financially, and I had no idea how I was going to climb out of the pit she had dug me into. After hitting that low point, I knew I couldn't stay passive anymore. I started gathering everything: meals, receipts, screenshots of messages, social media posts, anything that could show exactly what Claire and Mark had done. Every late-night text, every business expense that went missing, every photo of them flaunting luxuries I had paid for, I cataloged it all. It felt exhausting, but at the same time, it was empowering. For the first time in weeks, I felt some control returning to me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was building a case, a narrative of truth that couldn't be spun away. I remember sitting at my desk, cross-referencing bank statements with posts she had tagged Mark in, shaking my head at how meticulously they had tried to cover their tracks, but nothing was hidden well enough for me not to notice. Every lie had left traces, and for the first time, I saw the entire scheme laid bare. My anger was raw, my betrayal still stinging, but alongside it grew a sense of purpose. I knew I couldn't undo the past, but I could expose it and maybe, finally, reclaim what was mine. I reached out to a few friends I trusted, sharing the evidence cautiously, and their reactions only fueled my determination. "You've been played," one said bluntly, "and now you have the power to do something about it." Their words resonated, echoing the shift inside me. I realized that everything I had thought was lost money, trust, peace of mind, could be leveraged into action. Yet, even as I pieced together the full picture, Claire's messages kept coming, desperate and manipulative. "Please, I need your help. You're the only one who can fix this." Every ping of her name made my stomach twist. She didn't know I was onto her, that I held all the cards now. The power dynamic had shifted completely. But I hadn't decided how far I was willing to go yet, and as I stared at her latest frantic text, I felt a chill of anticipation. I knew a confrontation was coming, and when it happened, nothing would ever be the same. Claire's desperation escalated quickly after that. Suddenly, the tone of her messages shifted from pleading to panicked, each one more frantic than the last. "I can't believe it's falling apart this fast. Please, I need you now more than ever. Without you, it's over." I read them over and over, the same tight knot of anger and disbelief settling in my chest. For once, the power was in my hands, and I could feel the balance tipping. She had burned me, manipulated me, and drained my savings, but now she was at my mercy. When I finally spoke to her on the phone, her voice trembled with panic. "Please, I can fix this, I swear. I made mistakes, but you can help me turn it around," she said, desperate and gasping for air like she was drowning. Every word dripped with guilt and manipulation, an attempt to pull me back into her web. I felt a strange mixture of revulsion and exhilaration. She had underestimated me for months, and now, finally, I was seeing the fear in her eyes that she had never shown me before. "Claire," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "you had your chance. You made your choices, and now it's your mess. I'm not stepping in to fix it for you." The pause on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear her struggle to form a response, her desperation palpable. It was intoxicating, realizing that the roles had reversed. I wasn't just the betrayed lover anymore, I was the one holding the cards. Every late-night text, every stolen dollar, every manipulation tactic she had perfected over months suddenly became my leverage. I felt the tide of power shift, and it was almost thrilling to watch her panic. And yet, there was a strange, uneasy tension beneath it all. I knew a confrontation was inevitable, face-to-face or over some final reckoning. She needed me, but I wasn't sure if I would give her what she wanted or if I would use this moment to reclaim not just my money, but my pride, and finally, my peace. The storm was building, and the final showdown was just around the corner. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I arranged to meet Claire at a quiet cafe, somewhere public but private enough that I could see her reaction without interruption. When she arrived, she looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes darting around nervously, lips pressed tight like she was trying to hold back tears or excuses. I slid the stack of evidence across the table, bank statements, screenshots, receipts, every proof of the betrayal she had orchestrated. That her face went pale as she recognized what was in front of her. I can explain," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. I could feel the shift in power between us. I was no longer the one being manipulated. I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair, letting the silence press her. "Explain this," I said evenly, pointing to the documents. "Explain every single dollar you took, every lie you told, and every time you pretended this was all about us." She tried to spin a story, claiming unexpected business expenses, mismanagement, and even blaming Mark partially. But the evidence was irrefutable. Every lie she had carefully constructed had been documented, every manipulation laid bare. I could see her panic mounting, her attempts at charm failing, her excuses falling flat. For the first time in months, I felt the satisfaction of control. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't pleading for reassurance. I wasn't hoping she'd change. I was confronting her with the truth and watching as she squirmed under the weight of her own deception, the betrayal that had haunted me for weeks, that had made me question my judgment and self-worth, was finally in my hands to confront. Then came a twist I hadn't expected. Mark had left her entirely, and apparently she had relied on him for more than just the business. The realization that she had been alone, desperate, and trying to manipulate me one last time made the scene almost surreal. I knew I had a choice: let her beg for forgiveness, demand repayment, or walk away and let the consequences unfold naturally. Sitting there, looking at her panic-stricken face, I felt something I hadn't in months: power, clarity, and a sense of justice I could finally claim. Sitting across from Claire that day, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The anger, the heartbreak, the humiliation, they were still there, sharp as ever. I realized that the betrayal had taught me more about myself than about her. I had allowed my trust and love to be weaponized, but now, for the first time, I could reclaim my life on my own terms. "I'm done," I said, voice steady, as I gathered the documents back into my bag. "I won't give you another chance, and I won't let this define me. You made your choices, and now you deal with the consequences." Claire's lips trembled, her eyes glossy. She had played her game, and I had been the unwitting participant. But now, the game was over. Walking out of that cafe, I felt lighter than I had in months. The betrayal still stung, but it was no longer a cage. I had confronted the lies, faced the deception, and reclaimed my agency. I didn't need her approval, her affection, or her apologies to move forward. What mattered was that I had survived it, learned from it, and was no longer a pawn in someone else's scheme. Over the next weeks, I slowly rebuilt my finances, my trust in myself, and my sense of worth. The experience left scars, sure, but it also left lessons that no betrayal could ever take away. I became more cautious, yes, but also stronger able to recognize manipulation before it took hold and empowered to set boundaries that protected my life and my heart. In the end, Claire's desperate attempts to reach me became meaningless. The business collapsed, the lies unraveled, and the people who had sought to profit off me were left to deal with the fallout alone. Meanwhile, I walked away with something they could never touch: my resolve and the knowledge that I could survive betrayal and come out stronger. And as I reflect on it now, I realize that sometimes the greatest victories aren't about revenge or reclaiming money. They're about reclaiming yourself, piece by piece, from the hands of those who tried to destroy you.